Get off my property before I call the cops. Those words came out of my mouth on what should have been a peaceful Saturday morning. I was standing on my dock, coffee cooling in my hand, facing 5 strangers who thought they had the right to step aboard my boat. Leading them was Marcia Bennett, the HOA president of Lakeside Estates for 7 straight years. Clipboard in hand, eyes sharp as broken glass, she jabbed a finger toward me, as if I'd just broken the law. But here's the thing about property rights. They're not up for debate, and over the next few weeks, I'd prove exactly how much that mattered. The morning sun hit the water at 6:45, turning the lake into molten gold. I stood there, watching the ripples shift and fade, remembering why I'd bought this place 2 years ago. It wasn't the upgraded kitchen, or the square footage. It was the silence, the ownership, the space that answered to no one but me. My Boston ware sat gleaming at the end of the 40-foot dock. The tick planks beneath my feet needed maintenance, but I didn't mind. 15 years in finance had taught me that upkeep was the price of peace. When I bought the property, I'd spent 3 days with my attorney reviewing every clause in the deed. Lot M7. Marina Parcel, recorded in 1998, exempt from HOA control. 3 houses in the community had those rights. I made sure mine was airtight before I ever signed. Most people didn't bother reading fine print. I'd seen too many clients burned that way. That's why I kept my documents everywhere in a filing cabinet, cloud, backup, even a copy in my glove box. Paranoid. Maybe. But I called it prepared. At the time, I thought she was being dramatic. Now, I realized she was just experienced. Lakeside Estates was beautiful at a glance. 47 homes tucked around a private lake. Oak trees shading winding streets. The HOA kept things tidy, lawns trimmed, speed limits enforced, and $450 dues paid monthly to maintain the illusion of harmony. I'd never had a problem with them before. Paint color approvals, fence height restrictions, quiet hours. Fine, I stayed compliant because none of it touched what mattered most. My dock. 2 months after moving in, I met Ruth Collins, a 70-year-old former HOA president with the sharpest legal memory I'd ever seen. At a neighborhood potluck, she'd leaned close and said something that stuck with me ever since. "Your deed's solid," she said, stirring her coffee. "But keep it handy. Power gets nervous when it finds boundaries it can't cross." Then there was Marcia, always dressed in beige and gray, like she'd been born to chair meetings. She ran the board with military precision, every motion timed, every vote decided before it began. I'd seen her in action once. A homeowner planted roses without approval. She fined them $500 and quoted a 2007 clause about visual harmony. The roses came out within days. The smile she gave afterward wasn't victory, it was satisfaction. So, when she stopped by my dock 3 weeks ago, I should have seen it coming. "Nice setup, Daniel," she'd said, eyes scanning my boat. "Must be nice, having all this space to yourself." "Yeah," I'd said, polite but wary. She lingered, smiling that politician's smile, then walked off. It didn't feel like small talk. It felt like an appraisal. Then, last week, during a board meeting, some mentioned underutilized waterfront assets that could benefit the community. No names were said, but everyone knew which dock she meant. Yesterday, her son Tyler and a few of his friends were drinking near the lake path, laughing and pointing toward my property. I didn't confront them, not yet. This morning, I planned to take the boat out, but instead I found myself facing Marcia, Tyler, and 3 men in polo shirts. "Daniel," Marcia said sweetly, "we need a favor. These gentlemen from First Regional Bank are considering a grant for our HOA fund. Could we borrow your boat for a short lake tour?" I blinked. "You're kidding! It's for the community," she pressed. "You can fish any time." One of the bankers reached for my rail. My voice cut through the air like a blade. "Stop. This is private property. You don't have permission to be here." Tyler laughed. "My mom runs this place. She just gave permission." I pulled out my phone. "You've got 30 seconds before I call the cops for trespassing." The bankers stepped back. Marcia froze, face twitching between anger and embarrassment. Finally, she spun on her heel and marched away. When they were gone, I sat on my dock, pulse steady. I opened my deed app on my phone and screenshotted the page marked Exclusive Easement Lot MSCite. Then I called Ruth. "It's starting," I said. She sighed. "It always does. Keep everything documented." I looked out at the gray water and realized something. This wasn't over. It hadn't even begun. But by Sunday, I'd learned that Marcia wasn't done testing boundaries. She was about to rewrite the rules themselves. By Sunday afternoon, the storm I'd felt brewing finally arrived, not from the sky, but from my mailbox. There it was, an official-looking envelope stamped with the bold blue logo of the Lakeside Estates Homeowners Association. My name and address printed neatly across the front in serif font. I opened it, standing right there in my driveway. Inside was a single sheet. Violation notice number 1842. Offense: failure to cooperate with community initiatives. Fine, $500. Due within 14 days. Signed, Marcia Bennett, H.O. A president. I read it 3 times. It was absurd. Failure to cooperate wasn't even a rule. I'd gone through the HOA documents when I bought the house, 60 pages of legal jargon, and not once did it mention lending out private property for community benefit. But here was Marcia's signature, angled and sharp, as if the pen itself was accusing me. Inside, I booted up my laptop and opened the HOA button. I ran a keyword search for cooperation. 2 results. One in the preamble about neighborly spirit, and another about snow removal from shared driveways. Nothing even remotely related to my dock or boat. So I drafted an email. Polite, factual, unemotional. Dear Board, this notice is invalid per Section 7C of the HOA Covenants, which excludes private marina lots from community oversight. Attached are copies of my deed and the relevant sections. Please rescind the fine. Respectfully, Daniel Parker. Hit send. The auto reply came back seconds later. A board member will respond within 5 business days. I didn't expect a response. Not a real one. Anyway, the next morning, I woke to 17 notifications on my phone. The community group, usually filled with lost pet posts and lawn care tips, had come alive overnight. At 11:47 p.m., Marcia had posted, "Some homeowners don't understand that cooperation keeps Lakeside Estates beautiful. Refusing to help when the HOA requests support undermines what we stand for." No names, but everyone knew. The comments piled up. "If you don't like the rules, move. We pay dues for fairness." Nobody gets exceptions. People think owning property means they're above community. Only one comment stood out, posted by Ruth early that morning, before it vanished mysteriously. "Property rights are legal matters, not moral ones. The deed decides jurisdiction, not popularity." By 8 a.m., her comment was deleted. I took screenshots of everything, every post, every reply. I knew exactly what was happening. This was narrative warfare. Marcia wanted me painted as selfish before the real fight began. That afternoon, another envelope arrived. Violation notice, number 1848. Offense: lack of HOA registration sticker on Vissel. Fine $750. I actually laughed out loud. There was no such thing as a registration sticker for privately owned boats. The HOA could regulate community launch ramps, not individual marinas. Still, she'd printed it on official letterhead, as if that made it real. I called the HOA number. Voicemail. I left a call message explaining the error, citing the sections again. Then I sent another email, this time copying my real estate attorney. That evening, I got a quiet reply from Miles. The treasurer, Daniel. I didn't vote for those violations. Marcia pushed them through without discussion. I'm sorry. I don't have the votes to stop her. I read it twice. That told me everything. The board wasn't governing. Marcia was ruling. Wednesday afternoon, I saw her in the clubhouse parking lot. I could have ignored her, Primera soldave, but I was tired of reacting. Marcia, I called out. She turned, composed but cold. Up close, the lines around her mouth looked tighter. You need to withdraw those notices. Primera, cite evenly. They have no legal basis. The board voted, she said, eyes narrowing. The decision is final. I've seen the minutes. There was no vote recorded. Her jaw stiffened. Are you calling me a liar? I'm saying the process wasn't followed, I replied. Withdraw them, and we can move on. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You're new here, Daniel. Maybe you don't understand how this works. The HOA maintains order. We can't have people thinking they're above the rules. I'm not above the rules, I said. I'm following the law, the one written into my deed. Her smile twitched. You really want to fight this? You know how expensive lawyers get, and even if you win, you'll still have to live here. It wasn't a threat, just a reminder, a quiet flex of power. I met her eyes. I've already thought about it. She studied me for a moment, tense, shrewd. Your choice? She started walking away, but turned back halfway. You know, she said lightly, Tyler and his friends love hanging out by the lake. Especially near your dock. It's their favorite spot. She said it like small talk, but the warning was buried inside the smile. That night, I upgraded my entire security system. 24-hour monitoring. Cloud backups, motion alerts on high sensitivity, because I had a feeling the next move wouldn't come through paper. By Thursday morning, I'd learned Marcia didn't need rules to win, she had intimidation. By Thursday morning, my inbox looked like a courtroom. 15 emails from Marcia, all written in her clipped, formal tone, everyone accusing me of breaking another rule. Apparently, my boat disrupted the visual harmony of the lake. The reflection of its lights at night was pollution. Even the sound of water against the hull was now a noise violation. It would have been laughable if it weren't so strategic. Each message was CC'd to the entire board and several neighbors. She wasn't just targeting me, she was building a paper trail, a narrative of defiance. I answered each one the same way. Calm, factual, and loaded with proof. Time-stamped photos, sound-level readings, highlighted covenant sections. Every reply ended with, please reference Section 7C of the HOA documents, confirming my marina's exclusion from oversight. She never replied directly. Instead, the fines started escalating. $500 for failure to comply. $754. Dock inspection, $1,000 for unapproved maintenance activity. Total, $3,000 in what I could only describe as fictional penalties printed on official paper. I printed everything, every notice, every email, every screenshot. Then I built what I started calling my defense binder. Each section tabbed: communications, financial harassment. Timeline: by the time I finished, it was thicker than a college textbook. Friday morning, the online neighborhood forum lit up again. Marcia had pixelation over unity. The replies were predictable. Unbelievable. Always one person ruining things. Some people shouldn't live in communities. Osted another community update. True residents of Lakeside know that cooperation is what keeps us thriving. Unfortunately, one member has chosen. Not a single person named me. They didn't need to. Everyone already knew. Ruth tried to comment again. Deeds define authority, not opinions. Within 10 minutes, her post vanished, deleted by moderators loyal to Marcia. That afternoon, when I stepped outside, I noticed something off. Neighbors who used to wave now looked away. A couple who'd invited me to dinner months ago crossed the street when they saw me coming. Isolation wasn't a accident. It was part of her plan to break me socially before she lost legally. Saturday morning, I found the mailbox. Spray painted in red, crooked letters, selfish. The paint was still tacky. I stared at it for a long minute before pulling out my phone. 4 pictures, different angles. Then I checked my door. Camera feed. The mailbox sat just out of frame, hidden behind a tree. Convenient. I called the police. The officer who showed up was polite, but clearly uninterested. "Probably kids," he said, jotting notes on a pad. "No cameras, no witnesses. Hard to prove." I asked about patrols. He said he'd make a note, but I could tell it would disappear into a file somewhere. As soon as he left, I went to the hardware store, bought 2 more cameras, and installed them by sundown. One covered the mailbox, the other pointed toward the street. Then I upgraded again. Motion alerts, facial recognition, license plate detection. Expensive. Sure. But I'd learned long ago. Documentation costs less than litigation. That evening, my phone buzzed. It was Ruth. "You holding up?" she asked. "I'm fine," I lied, even as I was labeling the latest photos. She hesitated. "Daniel, this doesn't stop until someone makes it stop." Primera Leia ned back, staring at the camera feed on my laptop. "Ik know." "Then be ready," she said quietly, "because Marcia doesn't fight fair, and she never fights alone." That night, I didn't sleep much. The sound of the lake that once calmed me now felt like it was holding its breath. At 2:43 a.m., my motion alert pinged. I opened the feed. Nothing. Just wind shaking the oak leaves near the street. Still, I stayed awake until sunrise, watching the monitor like it was my lifeline. By Monday morning, another message arrived, this time not online, but taped to my front door in an HOA envelope. Emergency board meeting, Tuesday, 7 p.m. Subject: Community standards and member conduct. Attendance strongly encouraged. I read it twice. This wasn't about the boat anymore. Marcia wanted a spectacle, a public vote, a trial she could control. But power plays only work when the other side doesn't see them coming. Primera texted Ruth. "They're holding a meeting tomorrow." Her reply came seconds later. "Then it's time you stop defending yourself and start recording everything." She was right. I wasn't just documenting now. I was preparing for war. The next night, I walked into that meeting ready for anything, but nothing could have prepared me for what my cameras caught while I was gone. Tuesday night came faster than I wanted it to. The HOA emergency meeting was set for 7 sharp at the clubhouse. The email had said member conduct, but everyone knew it was about me. I didn't plan to argue. I planned to document. Before I left, I double-checked my new security setup. Cometas active alerts synced to my phone, backup recordings uploading to the cloud. Nothing that happened tonight would go unrecorded. When I arrived 15 minutes early, the parking lot was already half full. The clubhouse glowed warm against the evening sky, the kind of false calm you get before a storm. Inside, folding chairs faced a long table where Marcia sat with 2 board members. Her expression was neutral, but her body language was Beside her, the treasurer Miles looked uneasy. The 3rd board member stared at the floor. I took a seat in the 3rd row, where I could see everyone. Ruth slipped in behind me, giving a quiet nod. At 7 o'clock, exactly, Marcia tapped her microphone. "Thank you for coming. Tonight, we're here to address concerns about community cooperation and respect. Translation, we're here to put Daniel on trial." She clicked a remote. A slideshow appeared on the wall, photos of my dock, my boat, even a few I'd never seen before. "Private, waterfront access," she said smoothly, "is a privilege. When the HOA requests use for community events, refusal undermines our values." Slide after slide flashed across the screen. Then came a list, 8 so-called violations, each with a date and a fine amount. "This homeowner," she continued, "has repeatedly ignored community standards." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Marcia waited for the tension to peak, then said, "We're asking for the community's support to reaffirm cooperation as a shared value." 3 hands shot up immediately. People she'd prepped. "If he doesn't like the rules, he should move. He's hurting our property values. Rules exist for everyone." When she finally looked at me, her smile was tight. "Daniel, would you like to respond?" I stood, picked up my folder, and walked to the front. "I just want to clarify a few things," I said evenly. "First, this marina is private property. Lot M7, recorded in 1998 as exempt from HOA jurisdiction. I held up an enlarged copy of the deed. That's not an opinion. It's law. A few heads tilted. Uncertain now. Second, I continued, none of these violations exist in the covenant. There's no rule requiring homeowners to lend personal property or display HOA stickers on boats, and I've documented every interaction. I turned to the board. If I'm wrong, show me the section that says otherwise. If I'm right, rescind the fines. For a moment, the room was silent. Then Ruth spoke from the back. Voice clear. Property law isn't optional. Marcia, it's binding. If the board issued fines outside its authority, that's misconduct. The word hung in the air like a spark. Before Marcia could reply, my phone buzzed in my pocket, motion alert, camera 2. I glanced down. 4 figures on my dock. My chest tightened. I tapped the feed. Tyler, he and 3 friends were trying to pry open the cabin hatch on my boat. I stood up fast. Excuse me, I said, already dialing. The room turned to watch. What's going on? Someone asked. I need to report trespassing in progress, I said into the phone. For individuals on my property right now, I have live video. Units en route, the dispatcher replied. 12 minutes. When I looked back at the room, all eyes were on me. There are people on my dock right now. Primera sa, Eid calmly. One of them is Tyler Bennett. The color drained from Marcia's face. That's my son. He wouldn't. I held up my phone, showing the live feed. He's using a crowbar. Marcia, you might want to watch. The crowd gasped. A few stood up to see. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." I walked toward the door. Anyone who wants to verify can come watch the police handle it. Ruth was already on her feet. I'm coming. We left the stunned room behind and drove straight to my house. My headlights swept across the dock for young men frozen mid-movement. They tried to act casual, but it was too late. Police sirens cut through the night air. 2 patrol cars arrived within minutes. Officer Blackwell approached first, the same one who'd taken my mailbox report. You, the homeowner. I nodded and handed her my phone. Everything's on video. Audio, todo. She watched for 10 seconds and turned to the group. Step away from the dock. Now. Tyler tried to speak. My mom runs the HOA. She gave us permission. Your mother doesn't override property law, Blackwell said flatly. You're trespassing. The other officer took their names. Blackwell handed me a case card. You can file for a restraining order if this continues. Excellent documentation. By the way, as the patrol cars pulled away, Ruth exhaled slowly. Well, she said, that just went public. I looked out over the lake. The moonlight glinted off the water where the lock had been scratched by Tyler's crowbar. It was already public, I said quietly. Now it's visible. By morning, the footage from that night would spread through the neighborhood and Marcia would realize her control was slipping fast. By sunrise, the damage was done not to my dock, but to Marcia's reputation. The police report was public record, and word traveled faster than wind across the lake. By 9 a.m., screenshots of my live footage were circulating in the neighborhood chat. Even the residents who once ignored me couldn't pretend anymore. At first, Marcia stayed silent, but by afternoon, she fired back in the only way she knew how. 28 emails hit my inbox in less than 12 hours, each one colder and more desperate than the last. Your boat violates sightline aesthetics. The reflection from your lights disrupts lake ambiance. Failure to attend landscaping committee, meeting known compliance. Every message, CCD, the board, and random homeowners. She was drowning me in paper noise, hoping quantity would bury truth. I responded the same way every time. Polite, factual, and time-stamped. Screenshots of the real covenant sections, photos proving the boat hadn't moved, audio logs showing decibel levels below city limits. She wanted chaos. I gave her documentation. By the end of the day, I had a 43-page file of her harassment, each entry catalogued by date, subject, and violation number. Then came the certified letters. 3 new notices. Violation number 3, unapproved dock structure. $500. Violation number 4, lack of liability proof. $750. Violation number 5, retroactive maintenance fees. $1,000. Total, $4,200. Each claim was fabricated, each one easier to disprove than the last. She wasn't enforcing policy anymore, she was trying to bleed me into surrender. So I built a spreadsheet. Date, notice claimed rule, actual covenant section, amount. When I laid it all out, the pattern was undeniable. Escalating fines, increasing frequency, no legal basis. A digital roadmap of obsession. I sent it to my attorney with a note, documenting harassment pattern. Preparing escalation. The HOA forum turned into a virtual courtroom. Marcia posted late at night, when most residents were asleep, so her loyal followers could frame the discussion before sunrise. One person is trying to divide our neighborhood. Some homeowners believe rules don't apply to them. One bad apple spoils the barrel. No names again, but she didn't need them. Ruth's calm counterarguments, factual, concise, vanished within minutes, deleted by moderators who only answered her. It was no longer governance. It was censorship. Soon after, the silence began. Neighbors stopped waving. Conversations died mid. The man who'd borrowed my ladder last month crossed the street when he saw me outside. The couple next door turned their backs while gardening. It wasn't a coincidence. It was isolation by design. Then, Friday night, it escalated. I found my back fence, spray-painted in red again. Same shade, same sloppy letters as before. Only this time the message was shorter. Leave. The paint was fresh. I checked the footage. 3 figures in hoodies, moving quickly. One held a spray can. The other 2 stood lookout. The angles weren't perfect, but I recognized their builds. Tyler and his friends. I filed another police report. Different officer. Same outcome. Probably kids. Hard to prove. I wasn't surprised, but I wasn't discouraged either, because this time I had it all. Timestamps, faces, matching handwriting from the mailbox, vandalism. The pattern wasn't random anymore. It was organized retaliation. Saturday morning, Ruth called. "Come over," she said. "We need to talk." Her kitchen smelled like fresh coffee and quiet resolve. She had a folder waiting on the table. Inside were photos, a smashed mailbox, a keyed truck, vandalized property. "All from last year?" she said. The homeowner challenged Marcia about tree removals. 2 weeks later, his mailbox was destroyed. A month later, someone keyed his car. He moved out 6 months after that. I flipped through the photos. It was the same pattern, just older. "You think Tyler did this too?" "Primera?" asked. Ruth nodded. 3 people saw him near that property the night of the first incident. No one would testify. Marcia protects him, and people here are too afraid to fight. Why didn't anyone stop her before? She sighed. Because it worked. People gave up. They paid the fines, sold their homes, or just stayed quiet. Compliance was cheaper than resistance. "Not this time," I said. She looked at me, a faint smile breaking through her tiredness. "Then you'd better be ready." She hit harder before she breaks. That night, I organized every file into one master document, 22 pages, titled Evidence of Systematic Harassment. Emails, fines, vandalism, police reports, all cross-referenced by date. I backed it up to 4 different drives. Then, on Monday, the announcement came through. Emergency HOA meeting. Tuesday, 7 p.m. TAPA community standards and long-term residency expectations. It was clear what that meant. Marcia wanted a vote, one that would label me a problem homeowner and justify removing me from the neighborhood through social pressure. But this time, I wasn't just attending. I was presenting. I gathered every proof, every image, every receipt. Then I built a slideshow. Property deed, Lot M7, exemption. Timeline of false fines. Harassment emails. Police reports. Video stills of Tyler. By the time I was done, the presentation looked less like a defense and more like a prosecution. When Ruth called that evening, she said, "They're going to try to bury you tomorrow." I smiled. "Then I'll make sure the hole's big enough for all of them." What happened the next night didn't just end Marcia's reign, it exposed everything she'd been hiding. The clubhouse had never been this crowded. 40 of the 47 households showed up that night, some standing in the back, others crammed into folding chairs. The air buzzed with something electric, the kind of anticipation that comes before a verdict. At the front table sat Marcia, wearing her usual armor of beige and gray. Her posture was perfect, her expression unreadable. To her left, Miles looked pale but resolute. The third board member kept her eyes on the table. I arrived 15 minutes early, laptop and portable projector in hand. Ruth Hoyned, May helping set up the cables. "You ready?" she whispered. "More than ever," I said. At 7 p.m. sharp, Marcia tapped the microphone. "This meeting was called at the request of homeowner Daniel Parker," she said. Voice smooth but tight. "He's asked to address the community regarding his concerns." I stepped forward, steady and calm. "Thank you, Marcia, and thank you, everyone, for being here. What I'm about to show you affects every homeowner in this neighborhood." The first slide appeared. My deed, enlarged, highlighted in yellow. "This is my property record for Lot M7, I said. "It states that my marina is exempt from HOA control. That's the reason I declined to loan my dock for a community event. For that, I received over $8,000 in fines that don't exist anywhere in the covenants." A murmur swept through the crowd. Next slide. A spreadsheet of violations, dates, amounts, and the actual covenant clauses that proved them false. These fines were created without legal basis. I've documented every one. I clicked again, the screen filled with screenshots of Marcia's emails, all with the same tone, demanding, accusatory, and copied to the entire neighborhood. "This," I continued, "is harassment disguised as procedure." The next slide showed the graffiti on my fence, the vandalized mailbox, and stills from my security footage. "Ruth, estuth." "That footage," she said clearly, "was recorded at 2 a.m. 3 weeks ago." I pressed play. The room went dead silent as Tyler appeared on screen, flanked by two friends. The audio was clear. "Not here," he said. Camera. Then came another clip, Tyler smashing Miles' car mirror, spray painting the garage door, muttering, "Mom said this," one complained. A gasp rolled through the room. Someone covered their mouth. Miles stood, face drained of color. "That's my car," he whispered. Marcia shot to her feet. "This is a lie. You edited that footage." "I didn't," I said calmly. "Officer Blackwell reviewed it 4 days ago. The case has already been submitted to the district attorney." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I advanced the next slide. Financial records, HOA payments labeled consultant fees. GS Consulting, I said, is a company registered 8 months ago. Its listed owner, Tyler Bennett. The screen showed 4 transactions, each under $2,000, totaling $12,000, all signed off by Marcia. These payments were approved directly by the HOA president without board review, and no project deliverables exist. The third board member pushed back her chair. "Marcia, you told us those were maintenance expenses." Marcia's face flushed red. "I have discretion for minor expenses." 4 separate payments, just under the discretionary limit. I interrupted. "That's not maintenance. That's structuring." The room erupted voices, whispers, questions. For the first time, Marcia looked small behind her clipboard. Ruth stood and raised her hand. I moved to remove Marcia Bennett from her position as HOA president for financial misconduct and abuse of authority. The third board member's voice shook but steady. "I second. All in favor. Ruth, asket." Hands rose across the room, more than 30. 2 Tyler's and 1 silent neighbor. Motion passed. Marcia stood trembling, voice breaking through the noise. "You'll regret this. You think you can run this place without me?" Miles finally looked her in the eye. "We'll run it honestly." At that moment, the clubhouse door opened. Officer Blackwell stepped inside. Quietly, a presence I'd asked for in advance. "Mrs. Bennett," she said calmly, "I need to inform you that your son's case has been referred for criminal prosecution. You may want to contact legal counsel." Marsa Frusa. Then, without a word, she gathered her papers and left, Tyler following close behind. The door closed behind them, and for a long moment, no one moved. Then someone started clapping, slow, hesitant, but soon joined by others. Not applause for me. Applause for freedom. When the meeting ended, Ruth was named interim president. The board voted to hire a forensic accountant and rewrite the bylaws to prevent abuse of authority. Transparency became the new rule. A week later, the results came in. $23,000 in questionable spending. Marcia settled, repaying most of it and signing an agreement never to serve on the board again. She sold her house quietly and vanished from Lakeside before sunrise. 2 months later, the neighborhood felt different, lighter. People smiled again. Conversations returned. The dock that had once symbolized conflict now looked like peace. One evening, I sat out there with my coffee, watching 2 neighborhood kids run along the boards. They pointed at the compass on my boat and asked, "Does it really point north?" "Always," I said. They laughed, and for the first time in months, the sound didn't feel like a threat. That night, I looked at the binder on my counter pages, thick with proof and persistence. I didn't open it. Because sometimes, victory isn't about winning battles. It's about restoring balance and remembering why you fought in the first place. The lake was quiet again, reflecting the porch lights and the still sky above. And for the first time in a long time, that stillness felt like something permanent. Thanks for watching. Remember, sometimes the calmest voice in the room is the one that wins.